One. Hey guys, welcome to Trinity Force Podcast. My name is Adam Ponophobia Cogswell. You're listening to a very special episode here on a Saturday afternoon. I am joined by the Copenhagen Wolves Sports Psych Trainer, Weldon Green. Hi, Weldon.
Hello.
And I have Chris Alphenaar, who is a Masters Level Psychologist, and he works with Weldon over at mindgames.gg.
Hi.
And Chira, he's joining me because he's the man of the hour. He's got the cat.
I don't know what you're talking about. I do have, for anybody watching, the cat is with me as always.
So I hope that you guys enjoyed these extra podcasts this week. Normally we do two. We decided to do a third one because Weldon is living over in Finland. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. If I had the window open, you'd see it was the middle of the night and covered in snow.
Ooh. So not much different than Kentucky, where it's, well, except for that it's daylight and we're covered in snow. But excellent. So we are going to chat with Weldon and Chris about sports psychology and working in esports, and it should be, like this awesome, really interesting discussion. I really hope that we get some, good information. So we're going to move right in here first. Weldon, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got interested in psychology?
Okay, okay. Let me start with the first one. I'm Weldon, and I'm a Minnesotan. So coming to Finland wasn't really that big of a leap as far as like climate change goes. Although the daylight here is a little bit killer. I think that last winter they count how many hours of sunlight that we get in our town between about early November and when the spring finally arrives. And last winter it was 18 total hours the entire winter.
Oh, so, my God.
That was the biggest change, and I moved to Finland in order to pursue sports psychology because I had been I'd been a competitive swimmer for about 19 years, and when I was in university, I got injured out, and for about 6 years, I kind of just did other stuff, and then I realized that I had gotten a chronic injury because my coach was bad, not because of my own fault. And I discovered that as I was kind of rehabilitating my injury on my own, coaching myself. And it made me realize that there's a lot more to coaching than just knowing what to do physically, but more about like listening to the players and these kind of social coaching skills. And I wanted to be a better swim coach, so I knew that I wanted to focus more on the sports psych side of it. And I actually went in order to study that as well as exercise psychology, which is my big passion. I think that there's something like a third of Americans are going to be diabetic by 2025, and that's a really scary number. And I think that the U.S. government spends over $100 million now every year researching a cure for diabetes in pill form, but less than $10 million on research in physical activity and what that can do for health. So exercise psych is, I think, an even more important field than sports psych.
Right.
But here I am coaching video game athletes instead. So,
all right. Well, speaking of video games,
wait, hold on, Sean. We got Chris. Chris has got to.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Chris, I introduced you, but you're obviously in here too to get interviewed about the sports psychologist. I want you to tell us who you are, what you do, and all the good stuff.
My name's Chris, and I live in Michigan. I've lived here all my life. I have a master's in psychology, and I have a license to practice psychology in the state of Michigan. I work at a community mental health center, so I work with people that are experiencing depression, anxiety, if maybe they have been diagnosed with bipolar, and I provide therapy. So I use different therapy modules, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavior therapy, those sort of things. I use a lot of insight-oriented therapy too, to be able to help people move in their through their mental health issues, and so I've been doing that for about 4 years now, and I really enjoy it. I also work with people that have experienced trauma, and help do that too. So I started in college. Honestly, I just liked behavior. I liked people. I liked. And psychology seemed like a good fit for me for that, and so that's kind of the track I went, and it's been a really good one. And then I've loved video games like ever since I was a kid. So that kind of seemed like a good marriage for me to be able to work with Weldon, because that's kind of how I actually found Weldon. I was thinking about writing about stuff because I enjoy writing, and I saw him online on his website, and I was like, man, that's a really good website. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to create things from scratch when he's got all this good stuff. So I just kind of messaged him and was like, hey, do you mind if I write with you? And he was like, yeah, let's do this. So we've been doing it since like last September, I think. So.
Yeah. So I guess fun fact here, we found out before the podcast, this is the first time you guys have actually like talked over Skype or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
actually,
we're happy to be able to facilitate that little.
I was really curious what your dining room looked like. It's gorgeous.
Well, yeah, we actually, never eaten there, so it's
like most American families. So.
right.
So Weldon, can you tell us about what you do with the Copenhagen Wolves and how you're helping them in the psychology field?
Yeah, so I started working with them before the split started. The season 5 split, by the way. We're in the spring section of the league championship series, and they essentially contacted me because I'd contacted them. I'd sent out emails to all the teams and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. I've been blogging about it for a couple of years, and I'm really interested in doing sports psych training with any team that wants." And I've been pestering them in particular because I think that it would be best for my reputation if I took like a team that had historically not performed very well and then they went to Worlds. So that's kind of my first goal there. But so with the team, I've been working a lot with the coach specifically. This year, Riot has started coaching salaries, and so every team is picking up coaches. And there's this conflux of events where we have coaches flooding into the scene and sports psychologists kind of, showing up on the horizon. And the coaches are not very experienced. Like, there's not a lot of coaches from traditional sport coming in here. It's mostly just people who were analysts, and now they think that they're coaches, which is a good forward step. But it's like there's so much more to coaching than just knowing the strategy. Like, you have to lead the team, and you have to handle all these social dynamics. And normally, a lot of the things that I, as a sports psych trainer, would never do with players in traditional sport, like talk to them about their how they handle wins or how they handle losses, or like work with the team environment to like make it more teamwork friendly, or tell them how to talk to their teammates. Those kind of things I usually would not do in a traditional team, because that's the coach's role. But there's no professional coaches in esport yet. There's just coaches who are learning to become professionals. And so I actually get to do a lot of really fun stuff, aside from just talking to players one-on-one and helping them set goals and the kind of traditional stuff that we do in sports psych.
So the kind of a coach's coach, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I didn't realize that you were, working directly with the coaches. So that actually brings up a whole subset of questions I'd like to kind of go into before I let Shira take the reins here. So in the summer split of season 4, I don't know how much did you watch League before this? Like, are you big League fanatic, watched it for the last couple seasons, or you just kind of get tossed in here?
I actually started by watching Husky StarCraft because I played StarCraft. And then when I was watching all of these StarCraft games, there was this really colorful, cartoony game in the background going on, and I was like, what in the world is this? And who are all these fanatic people, celebrating it? And I realized it was free to play, so I started playing it. And then I had a baby. And so that happened, and I started watching it, and I discovered this guy named Hotshot GG and Wicked, and those became my kids, my baby's foundation in League, his training. Maybe not the best influences for a 2-month-old, but be as it may, that's how I got into League. So I have watched season 4 of the LCS.
Okay, because that brings me to my question. CLG put out a documentary last year, and they showed like the trials and tribulations of being an LCS team, because they were showing behind the scenes stuff, and there was a lot of turmoil between how some of the players, because there's definitely different types of players in this game and different type of personalities. If this is probably a rumor, but I remember that like Dexter working with CLG was very outgoing while everyone else wanted to stay inside and play video games, for example. So I'm sure that clashed. How is it working with the Copenhagen Wolves and the different personalities they have? Is there, do you have to teach them to live? You have to teach them to live together as a family and as a team, correct?
Right. I think that I'm a little lucky in this situation because the coach is really mature. I mean, he's already finished his master's degree, and he's, I think, a little bit older than what you traditionally see in the other coaching staffs. But so he handles the like how to live together politely with each other setting really well. But I do work with the players on how to talk to each other and what it is that teammates necessarily need to hear from their live-in teammates when they're not in a game setting. So like you don't, I mean, okay, it's okay to criticize people when you're in a game and you really want to help them learn and you really want to perform, but then, when you're all sitting around the breakfast table or whatever, and you're joking about how bad they performed in the last game, it's not necessarily the best environment setting cues. And I think that more importantly, it's realizing for myself like a learning situation, because these teams are totally different than all of the teams that we've encountered in sports psych research. They actually live together, which is really exceptional. I mean, you have to. When does the workday end? Mm-hmm. As an esport athlete, you don't go home at the end of the day and check out, and you can't like make mistakes. I think that one example of this that I dealt with last week was that one player on the team was playing a different game, and it affected the mentality and the motivation of the other players, because they see the results that they get, and then they see one of their teammates not playing league, in their off time, and then it frustrates them, and they don't know how to talk to that person about it, and they don't know how to make themselves motivated when their teammates are slacking off, or they see it as slacking off. But actually, like a traditional athlete will go home at the end of the day and they won't like take out their tennis racket and tennis ball and sit there for 9 hours like bouncing in the living room. They'll watch the NBA or whatever the heck they want to do, and they don't get any flack for it from their teammates because their teammates aren't living with them. So I think that mostly what I do is help players see that like that stuff is okay, and I help coaches not pick favorites, because that's something they're not very good at. Like you go into a team and you have a couple people that really schmooze up to you, and they're all the same age or close to the same age, and they start to like define people and incriminate them in their minds. And so I really try to help coaches see that like certain behaviors are acceptable even though you don't like them, and they can perform optimally if they train well, despite the fact that they might have different ways of relaxing.
Now, with the players that you are working with, I don't actually know the age ranges of the Copenhagen Wolves, but do you find working with the younger generation, kind of like the way I look at it, that they're still being molded into being adults. They're still very young, 18, 19, 20 in most cases. Is that more of a challenge to work with the younger people than like the generally older crowd that we see in traditional sports, looking at 26 to 30s? I know it's kind of an odd question, but a lot of people talk about in the league that it's the younger crowd. They don't understand business. They don't understand how to to be their own personalities, because they're just learning and they're being tossed into this as superstars, 18-year-old superstars,
to market themselves in a healthy way, or even act in a way that could keep their career going longer than what we typically see in the usual sort of flow of how people fade in and out of esports.
Well, the nice thing about working with younger people is they're very impressionable as well, and so you can make the fact that everything makes bigger impressions on them and changes them so drastically also means that when you intervene, you can make a bigger impact in their life and in their mentality. So I think it's actually a benefit for me as a trainer, because I don't have as many like pre-built schema to overcome. I don't have as many things that I have to dig out and say like, forget about this thing you've been doing for the last 4 years in your professional career because you've been doing it wrong, and let's fix that. So I actually had a focus on youth sport when I did my degree. I went into it planning to do 12-year-old to 13-year-old youth sport in the US. And that was my whole focus and objective: leadership training, life skills training through sport. And so this kind of fits like a glove for me, because although these players are not 12 and 13 years old, sometimes you can feel like they are. In esport, because they don't have the history of youth sport. When you're 5 or 6 years old and you start in youth sport, you have a coach with you guiding you all the way up to your teenage years, and you don't have that in youth sport. You just go straight from the living room coaching yourself into a team environment, and it's a real drastic change. So even though they're like 18 to 26, as far as athletic careers go, they might just be a few years into it.
Right.
And
okay, Sean, you can go ahead and take the reins here.
Here, I actually just kind of came up with a question based on a couple of the things that you had just said, with like members of a team seeing another member not playing, league and feeling like they're slacking or something like that. I'm a really big combat sports fan, whether it be like boxing, MMA, anything like that. And like last week, there was a UFC embedded, which is sort of like they go in with fighters and they see what they're doing and stuff like that. And Ronda Rousey, who's kind of like a phenom in women's MMA, she's undefeated, she's kind of a monster. in the video
She's
on her day
terrifying.
off.
Yeah, she's fighting tonight.
Yeah, she's fighting tonight. In the video, they go in and they're chatting her up on her day off, and during her day off, she's playing WoW all day long, and she says that's what she does when she's in training camp, and she wants to, kind of take some time to relax and anything like that. And if she wasn't in like a training camp, she'd just be working out straight through the week and not be taking a day off. So when it comes to a player situation, is there like a specific amount of time that players should take as a sort of break from league, whether it be like an hour or 1 day a week or something like that? Is there a point of diminishing returns in the amount that you feel somebody can play if they want to keep their performance at like a tip-top level?
It depends. My answer to that is that it's seasonal. Honey, can you come and Dad, can you come and collect this little guy? I'm in the middle of an interview that's streamed live.
I didn't know he was coming in here. I was going to read it for him.
My dad's visiting us in Finland, so
Oh,
help
perfect.
me out with this interview.
Perfect.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hey, Daddy.
So this is what it's like to train an esport team. No, actually, this is my real life. Shoot, I confuse the two sometimes.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. That's no bash on the Copenhagen Moves. You guys are amazing. You're not at all like my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
The answer is that it's seasonal. Like, let's say you're a 19-year-old esport athlete. You just broke into the pro scene. You're super motivated. You have plenty of reserves. You have a good family environment, and you're coping really well with everything. You move into the team, and you just feel like playing 14 hours in your off day, training like crazy. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that because you're not on the cusp of burning out. And that is what you want to do to feel satisfied. Now, once that's not what you want to do to feel satisfied, you want to take the amount of time that you have and make it more effective or efficient in a way, then you can start thinking about rest period as a way of kind of like continuing your career so that you don't end up a pile of a hot mess on the floor, with your brain melted. And I think that there's a lot of elite athletes who say that that they live their sport. So when they're not training, which in athletics, your training is gated by your physical abilities.
Right.
Like in fighting sports, you just cannot constantly train because
Your body
you
needs
have
time to recoup.
you have damage on top of muscle adaptation to handle with rest, and then in the non contact athletic sports, like it's a little bit better. Like swimming is probably the best as far as the amount of time you can train in a day before you have to quit, but eventually you have to quit. So there's a mental aspect to that, and that is that in a given day, you have a certain number of decisions that you can make. They call it decision fatigue, and it has a lot to do with like your mental energies, and your ability to focus and concentrate drops drastically after that kind of threshold is reached. And so unless you consistently train and can handle focusing in those like low effectiveness moments, it's not as good to train, through the middle of the night, and you're not going to be picking up a lot of strategy. So it's better to kind of like let stuff settle and let your subconscious mind do some of the work and really do the R&R. Now, I see a lot of people also doing R&R wrong. Like she was going from combat fighting to
World
video
of Warcraft,
games.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's like a nice like off thing. And I see a lot of esport athletes like going from one game to another. And the problem is they're still being competitive. Like, okay, I'm sure that she was actually pretty competitive in WoW, but it's a different type of competitive. And I see a lot of people go into CSGO and they're like, they still want to win. And that distracts them from their main goal. And I think that what I would encourage a lot of aspiring esport athletes to do is to think about hobbies that they can use to gain self-confidence or like self-ego in a way that is not at all related to electronic sport.
So
something like,
go ahead.
I don't know, flower arranging.
Well, I was going to ask because, for example, I'm no pro athlete by any means, but I like that you brought up the mental rest period, because I feel just playing the game as a person that if I can play a game for 7 hours a day or a couple days a week and I walk away, I feel like I gain a lot more about I'm able to reflect and everything that goes on. And one of my personal hobbies, a lot of people in the podcast know this, I like to brew beer, and that's a whole different style of hobby. You're putting recipes together and stuff. And no, I'm not telling people to go out and brew beer that are underage. but you should. But but is
still-
that something that you're looking at? Gardening, brewing beer, whatever it may be, something that's not video game related, but forces you to be mentally active.
Yeah.
And it seems like these things are something that you want people to be able to feel like they're succeeding at. Like with the brewing the beer, you want it to taste good when you're done. If it's not, then you kind of in a way, feel like you failed or something like that. But it's not something where you're necessarily competing against somebody else, so you're not just fatiguing yourself all the time.
Yeah, and Chris really has something to say about this because it has to do a lot with identity and identity creation and like thinking about it in terms of therapy.
Yeah, because you want to make sure that you have good self-care, right? Like,
Excuse me.
anything that you do for a long period of time, you need rest from. I think of like St. Vicious, right? He took a little bit of a break, and I believe it was because he talked about this was excuse me, a year or so ago before he got onto, I think it's Giants, right? That he's on now.
Gravity.
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 And he was a G. That's what it was. that he needed a break because for him it became too much of a chore to play, and I think that if we instill things in our daily life that allows us to be able to kind of decompress from what we're doing on a consistent basis, then that can really allow us to not have that fatigue and that burnout. Basically, in therapy, then I have to be able to make sure that I have time to be able to let go of a lot of those the difficult things that I have to hear each day, right? Like I have to be able to decompress from that and not continue to take it with me from work and continue working on that even while I'm at home. You need to have that break, and I think that that sounds like what Ron is doing too with WoW.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So regarding the future of esports psych, future psychology and esports, whatever you want to phrase it, what is your guys' personal hopes or goals for the future of this?
I would like to train myself out of a job. I think that like coaches, the best place for sports psychological principles is in the coaching role. You have this connection with the athletes. You're automatically their leader based on the organization. You have a good rapport. You're supposed to treat everybody equally. And 90% of what I do can be done from the coaching role in an optimal way. And so as we get these professional coaches, and my dream is to be successful enough at this year that I can start the first professional coaching network and events like professional development workshop. So it would be my dream to see in 2016 that we have like the first annual eSport Pro Coaches Conference in Paris or something, and everybody goes there and hears speakers and does workshops and presents their own cases and like learns from each other, and we start to develop these professional communities of practice in coaching and esport. And I think that is the number one like low-hanging fruit for improving athlete success and athlete well-being. And after that, yes, all of these like personal performance principles that Sports Psych does are super useful, and you will like the actual physical difference between players at the top level is so small, and so sports psychology makes the largest difference in how you're going to perform. And people will start pursuing that. But right now, esports psychology is essential just for athlete well-being.
Right.
And I want to like kind of get that offloaded from me and into the organizations, into the institutions, so that they know how to take care of their athletes well. And I am not as required as I am.
I would say for me, I would like to I think coaching would be awesome. I would like to learn a lot more from Weldon. He's been giving me a lot of good information about how to become more proficient in leadership and communication, and being able to express that in a way that's going to be able to translate into teaching others in a competitive setting. Another thing for me too is breaking down a lot of stigma regarding, for instance, anxiety or just kind of the idea of this person is a choker. Like being able to get that mentality and allowing it, instead of being like a label that we place on people, allowing it to be something that a person can grow from, and it's something that we see as like something to work on, rather than it be something that doesn't allow that person to kind of be, instead of them being thrown aside. Like an example, I watched the NBA a lot, and recently Larry Sanders, then he stopped playing for the Milwaukee Bucks because of anxiety and depression. And I was reading an article on ESPN how they're talking about there's not a lot of, even in something as big as the NBA, then a lot of help for people, mental health wise. You should be able to work those things. And I'm not saying I'm going to be able. I'm looking for like therapy with each team, because I'm not saying that's what's needed. But having those as topics we can discuss, so that way people can get either whether it's therapy or even something that's more just like life skills, or something that could be caught sooner. That way it doesn't turn into something that's like a social anxiety or something like that, or performance anxiety at such a high level to where it encompasses more than just the performance, if that makes sense. So like that way they aren't worrying about a lot of other things in their life too because of their experiences. So that's something I think would be really cool.
And does something like that also translate over into just how to carry on, in their day-to-day lives sort of things, not just necessarily when they're competing? Because I know, like,
absolutely,
look at the NFL, where they're having a lot of issues. They've had some like domestic violence issues, Ray Rice scandal, all that sort of stuff. And this kind of goes hand in hand with sort of curbing bad behavior, both in and outside of teams. Yeah,
and again, having an understanding that sometimes then some other behavior can be because of the reference to the ESPN article was saying, some people, I'm not condoning it, but some people use marijuana to deal with stress.
Right.
And so there's a lot of fines and regulations regarding that. And so their comment was, why not, instead of focusing on the outcome of what somebody may be doing, again, not condoning it, but saying that that's what they're doing, why not give them an opportunity to actually heal from it rather than have to use a different behavior to be able to work through that.
And it's interesting you mentioned that too, because there's a ton of jiu-jitsu practitioners that they'll imbibe, smoke, eat edibles, whatever, just to relax in like moments, because they're playing mental chess in that regard. It's just sort of
how
a way
Eddie Bravo came up with the entire rubber guard thing.
Basically,
the front of his book has the whole, has a whole list of like, he made pot, and this is how I came up with it. I was high one day and I was rolling around. I saw, I do this. So,
or
again,
somebody like,
we're not all condoning any of it, but it's just funny to talk about,
Yeah,
guys. Yeah, because I've there are talks that it's a way to kind of switch off sort of certain things that would make them over anxious when it comes to actual performance. Moving on, I had brought up a couple ethical considerations regarding this. So I guess the one I want to hit is, how ethical is it for somebody in your guys' position to sort of help two teams at once, especially two teams that are competing against each other? Like, if both of them are paying you, what are the ethical considerations that have to be taken into account in a situation such as that?
If I was going to talk about it from the team perspective, I would want to recommend that you first see if the person you're using is licensed, because if you are pursuing like the American Association of Sports Psychology license, or the one that I'm doing, the Finnish one, then you have to abide by their practices, which come from the psychological field. So you cannot, for example, like you have a client privilege, so that they, you can't say anything outside of the relationship unless they've given permission, or it's like asked for by law, or there's some sort of health issue at risk.
Right.
And those kind of safety measures are like really reassuring for teams. And so you can always like double check your sources and see, like, is this person pursuing that licensure? Because then they have to abide by those rules. The other thing is that to realize that like sports psychology is not really performance, like strategic focused. So if you want to, as a team, isolate the sports psychology simply to deal with like communication issues and emotional issues and fear and anxiety, you can do that fairly well and insulate them from any sort of strategic knowledge at all. I mean, I have no idea what composition Copenhagen Wolves are going to pull out this Thursday.
Okay.
I would be able to advise their competitors on like how to wage mental warfare against them and which lane to focus on, you know. But
who breaks the easiest?
I'm not going to do that, because I think that they can probably figure it out just by watching scrims. Like, I'm not going to be giving them any outside, inside knowledge. So then from the practitioner standpoint, like, I don't do it. I don't know anybody who does. I know other people who do not, like, coach two teams in the same competitive league. I think that it's kind of frowned upon, if not outright banned.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely would cross any line that I would be willing to cross if I were to do that. So that's why I only coach one EU LCS team. And I have very strict protocols in my agreement that I wrote and that I give to them about what would happen if they were to encounter one of the other teams I coach, in a international competition or at Worlds. So a certain number of weeks beforehand that I cannot have contact, and a certain number of or a certain level of intervention that I can do with them if they're going to have contact within a certain number of days. So I do one-on-one trainings. That's really intensive. I learn a lot of inside information. But then I do workshops where basically I talk and they do worksheets.
Okay.
Right. So I don't get anything from the relationship there. And I could almost do a workshop with Rocket. Sorry, Rocket. I pronounced your name wrong. I could do a workshop with Rocket if we were doing it in this model, and it wouldn't really have any sort of impact on their relationship with me and with Copenhagen Wolves as far as strategic transferring of information. But I don't do that.
Okay.
Well, since sorry, Sean, since we're talking about individual, or talking about teams, let's go down to individual players. What's a typical interaction with players? How does that work with you? Do you sit down with them one-on-one? Do you play the game with them? Do you listen to their comms while they're streaming? Can you give us how you go about giving them advice?
I watch their performance, and then I take some notes, and then I sit down and talk to them, and I ask them for their perceptions. And usually I get some inside information or some insight from the coach as well beforehand. And since I talk to all 5 players, I kind of have an idea of what they think about each other in the given week as well. And we have about a 1-hour conversation. It starts out with just their recall of how everything is going, and then I try to frame it in a theoretical framework for them so they can perceive it in a different way in a way that's more optimal to performance. And then we work on specific skills. So we'll do a couple drills regarding whatever we're working on that week. So this week it happened to be mindfulness, which is the state of being present in the moment when you're competing and not thinking judgmentally about your actions, so trying to avoid fear. And if you've ever been in the zone where you're performing in sport and you're totally clicking, everything is easy, everything's happening well.
That flow state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, flow state. You might even feel like time is slowing down, and you can just see everything happening and just choose the action that you want, as if you're picking it up off the table so easily. And that is the goal, is to hit that flow state, but you can't always hit it. And so mindfulness is the way that you approach that optimal performance without needing to be in the zone.
Okay. If you're allowed to talk about it, what are some examples of difficulties you've encountered while providing your services?
I think the number one thing would be players not paying attention. We're talking over Skype on the internet, and they'll just pull up Reddit, and I'll be talking, and I'll be like, "So what do you think about that?" And I'll just be like, yeah. And I'll be like, the question was not a yes or no question, but I can tell that you have no clue what I was just asking. So
Sure.
Let me go back here, and I try to enforce that they have webcams so I can see their eye contact. And that's detrimental, I think, more to them and to the organization. It doesn't hurt me,
Right.
because I'm doing what I'm doing regardless. But I want them to succeed, and in fact, I have a strange payment model for this. So most sports psychologists or sports psych trainers will charge by the hour, but I charge for results or value delivered. So I promise a certain thing, and then we get there, and then I ask, did we get to that point? Did I deliver on what I was going to say? Have you reached your goals? And they say yes or no, and then that's when they can then pay me. So I think that's a better model for both people, actually. I mean, I don't want to get into it really crazy on the business
Sure.
end, but yeah. What other problems do I run into? I think confusion about who's running things. One person will say, I need you to talk to the CEO about that. And the CEO will say, I need you to talk to the manager about that. And the manager will say, well, call the accountant. And I'm just like, who is running your organization? Who is making decisions?
Issue, yeah. Interesting. All right. So you talked about you getting paid for providing measurable success. How do you necessarily measure this success? Is it just team performance, the overall attitude of the team? What do you use as qualitative and quantitative measures to measure your impact?
Or can you give us an example of something that you were recently paid for that you delivered for the team?
Yeah. So promised a cycle on basic goal setting techniques so that you can set up goals for your training, and the coach can like run training with a very specific kind of tactics in mind, and then also on optimizing days. So how can you set up routines in the morning? What is good about the morning routine, and like what elements should be there, what elements are optional, what do the best athletes in the world do in their morning routines, stuff like that. And so we went through workshops and one-on-one follow-up on those two themes. And then afterwards, I just asked. So in this case, we did have quantitative performance results. Like we went on a 5-game, I think maybe 6-game winning streak in the ULCS. And I'm going to claim anywhere from 0 to 2% credit for that. But
You can claim 100. It's okay.
Hey,
We won't.
1%,
Actually, it's
1%
all
increase
Yeah.
at the top 1% is worth its weight in gold. So
Right.
I don't usually go by results, but I like game results because those often don't pay out. Like one of the trainings I do is mindfulness training, and that can take anywhere from 2 to 6 months just to get through, and the results are for your whole life. So it's going to make you better at what you do always slightly, and it's not necessarily going to make you a world champion unless you go out and you start training every day to become a world champion, which might take years. So I go by athlete satisfaction and by coach satisfaction, by the people who actually got the training, and they say whether or not they got it, because they will know whether or not the problem was their own implementation of it or what was going on, where the barrier was.
I think too, like just to kind of add on to that, I think it makes a lot of sense that, that you put it that way, because if you think of any type of behavior that we want to change, it takes time, right? Like say with it's working out, then you have a goal for something, and you want to gain this much muscle, lose this much weight. It's going to take time for that to happen. And one of the things, like I was talking about with stigma and trying to reduce that, one of the things that I'm really trying to focus on is showing that changing our mindset and our behaviors takes that much time too. If we want to have a certain body style by X amount of date, then a physical trainer will tell you it's going to take you 9 months. It's going to take you 12 months. And that's going into the gym X amount of times each time. It's eating a certain way. And that's the same thing with our behaviors and our mental process. And so, but having those short-term goals and the ones that Weldon's mentioning, that having like the ones that you can see in the moment is really important so you can see that progress. But oftentimes we want to see like the immediate results, think it's going to happen like that, and it just, the amount of time it takes, like the things that Weldon's teaching is they're probably going to next year be like, oh my gosh, I get it now.
Okay.
Even more so than maybe what they do right now.
I love that sentiment. There's Joe Rogan on his podcast the other day was speaking to somebody who has been extremely obese in the past and wasn't really that happy with certain exercises necessarily getting them the results they wanted to in a very short amount of time. And he just simply responded with, it took you this long to get sick. It's going to take you that long to get well.
Absolutely. Shameless plug. That's actually what the next article that I'm working with Weldon on getting ready for the website. That's basically the mentality of what I'm talking about. Of like, it takes time for these things. Think of what you're doing, especially even with league. It's going to be a journey. It's not something that you can do and just pick everything up right away. Weldon had mentioned some of with training, how a lot of it can happen really quickly at the beginning, right? That you'll see some of that, but then if you want to get the long-term results you're looking for, then it's going to take a long period of time for that to be able to be established. So
Gotcha.
To counteract that point, I just finished recording a podcast of my own with a player who went from unranked to 2.2K ELO in less than 4 weeks, and then became a pro paid player within the next year and a half. So there's also people who just go nuts.
Absolutely.
But that also might just be a situation too where the guy is a freak player as it is anyway.
Right.
So like there are still moments where, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot going in there, but some people just, they soak stuff up like a sponge, whereas others, they're gonna have to put in way more work. And that it's sort of a situation between talent and opportunity. In that sort of situation, you have to keep giving yourselves the opportunity, because most people can't do that. I'd say 99.9% of people can't do that.
Well, a few weeks back, it was very few weeks ago, we did a podcast called Scrum Mentality, basically how to make yourself a better player. And we spoke about how you have to basically break yourself down before you can build yourself back up, which is where we're going with this. And we've actually had a lot of good feedback and a lot of players that are like, that's not how you do this. That's not going to work.
I'm sure you could give us coaching advice on how we could have probably more eloquently put that.
That's where my question is moving forward with this. If you, from like a soloQueue mindset, or any players that are not professional players that want to get better at the game, want to make themselves better, they want to learn, they want to be able to soak up more information, learn. Do you have any tips, tricks, anything that players can use from a psychology aspect that can help them become better at a video game?
I would say one of the things is really
ahead,
just focus on what you can control, because oftentimes that's what I've experienced when I play. Right, a lot of times we're like, oh my gosh, bot lane fed, and there's no way I can do anything now. Like, this game's ruined, forfeit at 20, and but in that moment, then you're basically throwing away opportunities. You have a lot of other opportunities to increase your own game, because that's really all you can control. You really can't increase their level of play. All you can do is focus on what you can get better at. So whether it's CSing, whether it's trying to practice flashing over walls, just randomly. If you feel like the game's ruined anyways, then do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do when you feel like it's like you're going to actually win. But trying to focus on that, because otherwise you get emotionally attached to things that aren't something that you can change.
I think that like the mindset of maybe humility is a good way to put it. I like what you said about the Scrum thing when you were doing how it's just like breaking yourself down so you can build yourself up. I like to put it that that most of my job is spent helping people unlearn things that they've already learned, so that they can try to improve them, and realize that, like, if you're not good, and whatever your definition of good is, like if you're gold 2 and you want to be gold 1, or you are diamond 5 and you want to be diamond 1, whatever it is, the reason is because of habits and physical actions that you're doing that are incorrect, that are learned incorrectly. And so you actually have to physically force your mind to mentally unlearn those things so you can relearn them better. And that there are motor actions, like you're clicking the keyboard and you're making strategic decisions, and you have to train those the decision-making process and those motor commands to be better. And controlling the controllables is a big part of that as well, what Chris mentioned.
Going along with that, how would you suggest that players in a soloQueue or a ranked 5 sort of setting do to better communicate with their team, whether they are in that soloQueue situation, in a healthy way that isn't going to cause players on their team to tilt, potentially cause them to tilt? Basically, how do you improve communication? Because that has been a giant issue between players in soloQueue, just kind of getting under each other's nerves or sabotaging their team from the inside without them really even knowing they're doing it.
Mute everybody.
Mute everybody. That's the step one. This is my cut to the chase, like brutal advice. My advice is that you believe that you are everybody's mother, and that they are like on their way to committing suicide after this game because they feel so bad. So like, you want to imagine that you are Winston Churchill and everybody else needs leadership. And even if there is a leader on the team, like, that doesn't mean that you cannot be a leader and give leadership in itself. And leadership does not mean telling people where to go and how to get there. Leadership means helping people to do what they want to do in the game, which is most of the people log in to have fun and to win. And so you can win a game while still losing. Like, we've all played games that we lost and were the most amazing matches of our lives. And we've all played games that we won and we're just like hungry for more because it didn't satisfy us at all. And it's possible to be satisfied with a game no matter what the outcome is. And so getting yourself out of that mindset of like, this is based on victory, instead of the fact that like, this is based on joy in teamwork and joy in seeing something beautiful come out of whatever it is that we're doing. And how can I get the people on my team there? So you are the therapist on your team, and you need to tell everybody like, that's okay. Don't judge yourself. like, we'll make it right. I'll come help you. What can I do to assist you? Like, just be the leader. That's the only thing you have to do in these environments. There is a huge lack of leadership in soloQueue.
Something I would add too is that as a therapist, then I have to develop rapport with people. So sometimes people have to see me, like they come from parole or they come from because of the court system or whatever it could be, and they don't want to see me. They don't want to be there. They don't want to be able to. They just want to get it done, right? And if we're going to be able to make any movement in areas that they could decide that they want to change, I got to develop that rapport. And so some of that is by validating good things that that person has done. Because too often we focus on the negative things, and so that can really build idiosyncrasy credits. Meaning that things that people start to like they trust in you, basically, like building that trust. So, for instance, if you're bot lane and someone made a nice move, just saying nice job, and that way, and saying, hey, that I appreciate that word there, something like that, something short, obviously, because you don't want to be typing and taking up all that time. But that way, later on, when you say, hey, could you word that, it doesn't come across as you've already kind of developed that foundation of I'm giving you positive feedback for the good things you're doing. So I'm asking. I'm not telling you that you're support and you're never wording. Because without voice inflection, it's so hard. Like, think about a text you've had before that came across the wrong way. And just because of the way it could be read, right?
Well,
Same
it also
in chat. Go ahead.
It kind of puts the idea into your head of I should go do this instead of why are they telling me to go do it?
Absolutely, it lowers defensiveness. Is what it does.
I had heard at least when dealing with anything on Twitter, Facebook, anything like that, whenever you're trying to communicate via just text, read back everything that you're about to send in an extremely monotone voice, because if it comes off as aggressive whatsoever, it's going to be read as aggressive because they don't see facial expression, inflection, anything like that. I love that.
Another thing you can add to that too is just kind of flip it around. Like if you were in their shoes and they said that to you, how would you interpret that?
Right.
And so it can be kind of a nice, quick way to kind of self-assess whether or not what's being said is going to be. I mean, obviously we can still be wrong because we know what we're meaning, right? But it could be an easy way to be able to miss a couple times when somebody could start raging at you and then just quit the game and you lose.
And it seems like a lot of people need to kind of retrain themselves to do this. Because, I mean, I know for a long time, even myself, I'd go in and that isn't necessarily the first thing that crosses my mind when somebody dies. It's just like, well, shit, you died. God damn it. What am I supposed to do now? I used to play with a guy, and I don't think he plays anymore, but he made it all the way to Plat 1 in a very short amount of time. And he isn't the nicest guy ever, but he would sarcastically in game sound like the nicest player that you've ever run into. It was sort of like one of those things, somebody died, oh, that was a great try, so-and-so, and I'd be on Skype with him and he'd say it in like a sarcastic tone, but in game it came across as like, oh, you'll get him next time sort of thing. And people responded really, really well to it. And it was, in a way, like I could see some people getting all negative and then being like, well, if they're going to be bad, I'm just going to make them feel worse, and they get some sort of sick satisfaction out of it. But at the same time, like in a situation like that where, you were kind of being sarcastic about it, but somebody like took it in a really positive light, that itself was really kind of, I don't know, it was a refreshing feeling like, oh, they didn't take it in a bad way and they're not in a bad mood because of it. So it kind of gives a more feel-good vibe of the game anyway in a situation that otherwise was pretty negative. And I think if you can get everybody in sort of a route where they're all going in with a positive mindset, even if they did go 0 and 2, 0 and 3, 0 and 5 in lane, but they're still kind of playing for that win rather than playing for, I lost the lane, what can I do to make up in the short term? They still have an end goal. It just helps the whole team out in the long run.
And the key thing is, by that point, they're not playing for the win. They're playing for you. Like they heard that and they like don't want to let you down. Even more so than when the game started, when you were a stranger. Now you're this person who believes in them and has shown them trust in spite of their actions. And they're like, oh, wow, like this is somebody that, not consciously, they're not thinking like, oh, yeah, this is my new savior, but they have this debt and they're like, I want to show this guy that like his faith in me was well deserved. And so I'm going to buckle down and focus. And they're not playing for themselves only anymore, which is a rather weak motivator.
Right.
Like all you have to do is look at smoking and drinking to see that. Like, I want to be in shape. 40 years later, like, what happened? I've been smoking for 25 years because it's only themselves, right? But the moment that you're drinking like affects your family, people can drop it like a bad habit, which is okay. That's ironic, but but the same is true in game. Like when you get people playing for each other instead of just for themselves, then it can be very powerful. And that's a little bit of what I do with the Copenhagen Wolves is I try to get them playing for their teammates and training for their teammates instead of just their own ambitions, because those don't break as easily under pressure.
Right.
Well,
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, because if you think about it, like too, if you have that trust, then it's like a team like the Copenhagen Wolves. If you have that trust, then you can get to the point then where you can be more brutal, you can be more honest, because you know that what they're coming from with, like the communication, is meant to help. It's not meant to hurt them, and so that's kind of the difference between solo queue. You can't really get to that point because you're 25 to 40 minutes of playtime with the person. You're not going to be able to establish
the only time
that.
you're ever going to play with
them.
Yeah,
exactly. But in a team atmosphere, that's why that trust is so imperative, because that allows you to say or do things that maybe you wouldn't have been able to. Same thing in a therapy relationship for me. I can tell people, I've gotten to the point of people, I can just tell them, like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like, and I mean, obviously not exactly like that, but the point is you can really move somebody once you have that trust, because they know that you're not trying to harm them by breaking them down in a way that's hurtful.
I really like that we got onto this topic, because it's something that I wish somebody would have told me 2 years ago when I was really trying to climb the ladder. Because I very much had a problem with accepting criticism and learning to make myself better. It was very much stuck into, as Weldon had mentioned earlier, the team mindset where the team is doing this. I'm not having internal inflection. I'm the one who's feeding, but I'm blaming my team for me feeding, and I hope that a lot of players listening to this actually, grab something out of this, and something that we've been saying for a long time. And there's other people enforcing what we've been saying on this podcast, that it's you're the only person you can control. So you need to make the best of what you can do.
You're the common denominator in your game.
Yeah. Yep. I love that quote. I say that all the time to people. I'm like, there's one common denominator here.
Yeah. So to move this forward into a different area, one of the last questions we have here is, we may have sort of touched on this earlier, but it's about mental exercises and preparing yourself to play games, preparing yourself to better accept the criticism, whatever that you may find. Do you have any drills or visualizations or any type of therapy that players can do on their own to get better at get better at the game, or get better at just I guess being a person? Either of you go ahead.
Do you want to go first, Chris?
Yeah, that's fine. I would say some of the things, in game, and this may sound, maybe this is common for some people, but I would just say deep breathing. When we get really stressed out, then our frontal lobe shut down, and that's where we make all of our decisions, actually basically all of our decisions. And so getting the oxygen to the brain, allowing it to actually work the way it's supposed to, is really healthy. So having using your diaphragm and just having those deep breaths can really be a way to help get rid of some of those nerves. In terms of being able to increase your game, thinking out scenarios. I think that's really important. Being able to have a mental image of what you're going to be doing, what your outcome, what you want to be, and how you're going to accomplish that. So say it's I like to play Malphite and other large champions, because Kentucky champions, because otherwise I'll die. So I think of if I'm level 4 or 5, sometimes I know people don't underestimate his ult power and top, and so I'll try to whittle them down a bit to be able to get to the point to where I can just ult, E.
And all in them.
Yeah, and basically just do everything to try to basically destroy him. And so the point is, if I process that out, how is this going to happen? And you can do it ahead of game too. You don't have to just do it. And then also too, what will happen if it doesn't work out? How am I going to recover from this? What are some of the and so having that mental imagery of what process you need to make to get the outcomes you want.
I think that going along with this theme, controlling the controllables, one simple activity you can do is just take out a piece of paper, and on one side you write controllables, and the other side you write uncontrollable, and you simply you simply just list everything that you can think of that you can actually physically control through your keyboard in the game that you're about to play. And then on the other side, you have to list everything that you cannot control. And remember that like 9/10 of every game is completely uncontrollable to you, as far as there's 9 other players in the game. And I think that will help kind of frame your behavior in a way that is always productive towards what it is you want to accomplish. And then for visualization, I think that let's get back to this communication thing, because it seems like that's a really hot topic. I can tell you exactly what I start with when I coach this. So the first thing is to imagine that behavior is kind of like a window, that you see behavior through a window. So a lot of times you see behavior and it's not a problem for you. Like, for example, there's an Aurelia in the top lane. This is an example I use. And she is like playing super aggressive against a Lee Sin or anybody else. I'll just pick Lee Sin. And, okay, she tower dives him at like level 3 and kills him and gets out. And everybody on the team is cheering like, yeah, Aurelia is going to carry. And, she proceeds to like go back in base and get an item up and teleport back in the lane, kills him again, takes the tower, pushing the top lane to the second tier turret. And everybody on your team is just like blissfully happy, okay? And then let's say the game goes another 30 minutes and things don't go so well all over the map. And now you have the Aurelia who's still really fed, bottom lane, second tier turret, split pushing, and you're all grouped around Baron, right? And all of a sudden the Aurelia dies. And you realize that she turret dove the Lee Sin and like died under turret. And now the Lee Sin teleports to Baron and they take Baron and they win. And you're super pissed at this stupid Aurelia who threw the game. But the behavior was the exact same thing she was doing all along. And you were seeing it through a different perspective at all times. Like, she's playing this very aggressive, dominating style. And at one point you're like, yes. And at another point you're like, no, that's stupid. So the behavior did not change. It's just how it affected you changed. And so the first thing is to realize that like your perception of all these things really depends on how the behavior affects you. That's the only thing that matters. If somebody is like smoking across the street, you don't really care at all about their life. But if they're smoking next to you at a restaurant, then all of a sudden you care that they're a smoker. Okay? So that's number one, when you realize like people's behaviors in game like do not matter to you at all. You don't care about any of these people's behaviors unless they affect you. So stop trying to change their behaviors. In fact, in a single game, you cannot change a person's behavior anyway. Chris will tell you how long it takes to change behavior. How long does it take? 1 to 25 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so when you say like stop doing that to somebody, like it's completely ineffective. So most people are stuck in the process of telling people what they want to say instead of telling people what that person needs to hear. So this is when I said get yourself in the perspective of like the mother or the leader. Like, what is it that that person needs to hear at that moment? Not what is it that you need to say at that moment to feel good. Rely on coping mechanisms in your normal life for handling that. Like, don't take it out on your teammates. Like, I don't know, kick your cat. Oh, sorry. No, don't kick your cat. Kick your chair or... Sorry, Sean, that was kind of
That's all right.
intentional.
I got it. She just kicked me back. She's big enough anyway. I'm not worried about it.
Oh, God. Yeah, okay, don't kick a big cat. They'll take you down.
Yeah.
Don't kick any cats. I do not condone animal violence.
There we go.
Yeah, so take it out on something in your life. Like, use your coping mechanisms. You're an adult, or maybe you're not, but you have things that you can do after the game to deal with the stress. Instead, tell the team what they need to hear, which is that you approve of them and their actions, and you support them, and you want them to fight for you, regardless of how they're doing. And then I had a third thing, and I kind of got so into it, I forgot what it was.
That's all right. If it comes back around to you, and you
It was a great answer nonetheless.
Yeah. So, yeah, Sean, don't kick a cat, okay? Wait, I've got a hole in the... I had to switch my desk around because I put a hole in my desk, and that's when I realized I had a problem. I went, I gotta fix my behavior, because there's a hole in my desk where my mouse is at. Oh, no. Well, it was one of those where you take your fist and you smack an IKEA desk, and the IKEA desks aren't really put together too well. And then I left a hole, and I went, oh, well, I'm switching my desk around tonight, and I'm fixing my behavior because somebody pissed me off in soloQueue, and the same thing. I really dove and lost us the game, and she didn't, yada yada.
She wouldn't group, and we lost because of it. This, that, and the other. No, and we've given the advice in the past. Lose a hard game, go do some push-ups, go take a walk. Right. Get away from the bad situation for a second. Let yourself cool down before you get right back into it. Yeah. Otherwise, you're bringing those bad vibes with you.
I'd like to circle back around again to what you can do outside the game when you're taking breaks, because I see a lot of people that are going, a lot of the people who play, I'm trying to be politically correct when I say this, a lot of the people who play the game are not that physically fit. They are the embodiment of what most people feel are gamers. And a lot of the teams are taking steps to improve their their physical wellness by going to the gym and whatnot. However, from a mind standpoint, that can also take a lot out on you. You can be very physically exhausting to go to the gym and whatnot.
Should be.
Yeah. But if players are doing that early in the morning, that could potentially affect their play at night when they're practicing, correct? Do you have any advice or what advice would you give the teams when it comes to physical activity outside of playing the game?
Yeah, I have loads of advice because this was actually my field of study. Both the physical side, the neurological side, and the psychological side. So, okay, that was 3 sides. I guess it's a triangle.
Okay.
So
okay
Triforce here, I'm working with your guys.
I like it.
Yeah, so there's so many amazing things that happen neurologically when you do physical activity. It's kind of like moving meditation. And if it's something that is endurance-based, like walking for a long time, or something that's automated, then it's even better. They've done a ton of studies on this and how much it helps the brain. So those kind of things will just improve your mood drastically. I remember when we moved to Finland, we entered the honeymoon phase of culture shock. And that's when you absolutely love the place that you're living. Mm-hmm. And we never left it because we had a 2-kilometer commute into the city and back every day walking. And so 2.5 years of just walking anywhere from 5 to 6 kilometers a day makes you blissfully happy no matter what happens in your life. And so you can take advantage of that principle to make your soloQueue games a lot better and happier and healthier also. And you actually do not need as much physical activity as you think you do to be healthy. There's this incorrect mindset in the US about exercise and health and its relation. People conflate body mass index and diet and physical health and physical activity way too much. So let me set something straight. Movement and exercise are not very well correlated with your body shape. Okay, so you can exercise a ton and not lose a lot of weight, and then there's other people out there who are eating junk food all day long and barely exercise at all and are not fat.
Hi.
Yeah. So genetics is what's going on here, and not just genetics, but epigenetics, like how your genes were expressed in the womb as your body was being created, regardless of what kind of genes are there latently that are not being used. And you don't have a lot of control over that, like how it is that you process calories. So most of what you have to do if you want to control your weight from a physical perspective has to do with diet. Now, that has almost nothing to do with health. You can actually be quite physically active, walking and moving in limited ways, and have a very healthy interior system despite however many lipids you're storing in your fat cells. And one good example of this is diabetics who, type 2 diabetes, you can get it from being overweight and kind of getting metabolic syndrome. But the moment you start doing physical activity, you can cure it from a physiological standpoint, essentially, and you won't really change your body shape all that much. And I think that the current recommendations are something like 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and you can break those down as little as 15-minute segments, and they're still effective. So you can just go on 3 15-minute walks a day, and you can cut out a lot of your risks for all of these metabolic diseases. And just so everybody knows, there's actually new studies that are being done right now, and one of the current prevailing theories about health and physical activity is that actually being thin is a bad evolutionary. Is an evolutionary negative. Right. We have these insulin molecules that are going to our fat cells, and they're screaming give me this energy, and the fat cells saying no, I'll hang on to this. So it could be that actually getting fat is an adaptive protective measure towards this kind of massive amounts of sugar and glucose that we have in our diets nowadays. And you can see a lot of these metabolic diseases in people that are skinny when they reach the proper age for it. You'll see a 45-year-old skinny guy dying of a heart attack because his diet is the same as the fat guy, but the fat guy's healthy because despite the physical representation of all of those calories, his body adapted to it by like trying to store it all instead of burning it all. So we don't know what's going on inside our body is the long and the short of it. So don't make any assumptions about that. The only thing we do know is that physical activity is amazing. It's really good for your brain. It's really good for your health. You don't need to do exercise. You don't need to go to the gym and kill yourself. You just need to move.
And go do
it as
something
much
you
as
enjoy. Like that makes it so much easier. I mean, some people don't like to run. I don't like to run. I used to do it all the time, but
I won't.
I got into
play basketball
kickboxing.
now?
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Like that's perfect. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be anything like where you're murdering yourself over, but getting out there and actually doing something. Not only is it great for the most part for your body, but it also makes it so that it creates a little better tandem between your brain and your body anyway. So for the most part, can help with reflexes to more quickly pull off that skill shot you want to pull off in game or something like that. It's sort of, I mean, it's a system that works together. So if you can get everything rolling, that's a good thing.
It's one system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are no two separate systems.
So with that, I feel like you're kind of like you're riding this line between, like you said, like mom and coach and psychologist. Like you're riding this fine line of how to help these players. Do you have advice for players if they decide they want to go to the gym, they decide they want to start walking, they decide they want to do anything? Is there anything that players can actively do that like the 15-minute breaks, 15-minute breaks,
or even something to start slow if they're not used to doing something.
Because like you said, in the United States, a lot of people think you need to go to the gym, you need to kill yourself for an hour and a half at the gym just throwing big weights around. And everything that I've learned from doing jiu-jitsu and all that is you can go do 20 minutes at the gym, do 3 or 4 exercises, walk out, and you've done your work for the day. And so what can somebody do
especially
at home
if you're not a professional athlete?
So the low-hanging fruit is walking. It's really good for you, and it's not really any better than running as far from a health standpoint. I mean, it's not any worse than running. Like if you run 2 kilometers or walk 2 kilometers, you're essentially causing. I mean, for your organs, you're doing pretty good. For your brain, you're doing fantastic. You're active for longer. So actually, you might even be better on the genetic level because there's genetic damage you get from being sedentary. Like if you sit for more than 45 minutes, you are starting to do genetic level damage to your cells. After that point. So just think about that next time you've been sitting for 3 hours and you're like, oh my God, my RNA is like literally disintegrating in my cells.
So does this kind of transfer into the people that stand? I have a standing desk at work. I stand all day. Yep. I feel better when I stand. Is there actually is there something to that? Does that help you compared to sitting for 45 minutes?
Yep. Standing is better.
Okay.
And people say like, oh, standing is bad because walking is better, so you need to have a standing desk with a treadmill on it. And I say like, okay, yeah, but don't sit because you can't walk. Like standing is still better. And yes, it hurts your feet. So move around, get a pad.
I'll be the first one to tell you I had to buy a pad.
Shift your weight, do whatever.
Because
I've been standing for 4 hours now doing this. And
have you? Are you standing?
Yeah, I'm standing right now.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to get a standing desk at my house. For
IKEA sells them now for €250.
Oh, look at that! It's moving and everything. This is awesome.
Yeah, they're adjustable.
Mine's an IKEA desk that I just got really tall legs on, and that's what I stand all day at work. But I like it because I don't feel fatigued by 3 o'clock. By you hit that 8-hour workday. By 3 o'clock, I'm sitting there at my desk. I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. And I'm standing. I don't feel that bad.
Not to mention, it also engages your body way better than sitting is anyway. Like there's so much to be said about little tweaks that can be made. That's just better.
I do all of my training standing for exactly that reason, John.
Okay. So yeah, I like how we've gone, I feel like we've gone like across the entire spectrum here of everything. Psychology.
And the best part is there would still be way more to talk about.
And that's fine. We have plenty of time. I guess then my question is, since you have people walking, do you recommend that people try to stand if they have the opportunity to, if they can go out for, $250 and buy themselves a standing desk to play a game? Are they going to, are they going to feel better at the end of the day if they do a 7-hour, day playing the game standing?
I've actually never played League standing, so I'm not really sure about that. So, go out and try it, guys, and report back.
Let us know.
Be
our guinea pigs.
But what I recommend is that you do variations. So, like, sit for whatever's comfortable, and then, for 45 minutes, set a timer, whatever, and then stand. And even if it's just 15 minutes of standing, then you sit back down. It's good enough to kind of get your body engaged. Okay. You don't need to stand for like 9-hour marathons. You can just stand for 30 minutes and then sit back down. Just keep your body moving and you'll be fine. And for those of you who don't want to do the walking or the other thing, standing thing, then I would recommend, and kettlebells, because I think that they're
That
like a
functional
whole body
strength.
kind of like. There's something that you just need one weight of. Like, it's not like dumbbells where you need to have a range. You can just have like a 20 kilogram kettlebell. Let's see, how many pounds is that? Like a 40 pound kettlebell. And there's a great cheap ebook about this called Strength Simple and Sinister, or Kettlebell Simple and Sinister, or something. It's by Pavel Tsatsouline, who's one of the leading experts in strength training for the U.S. Military, and he also trains MMA fighters, by the way, if you're into that.
The kettlebells are making a huge comeback in the MMA community.
So there's a really big difference between musculature, like building up muscles, and just having strength. I mean, just look at like Bruce Lee, you know, who could go to bodybuilders. He did this at some bodybuilding contest, and he would sit on their back and he would see how many push-ups they could do. And these would be people who are like 180, or I guess kilos. So it'd be like 220.
They're like 250
pounds,
yeah,
you know,
like
like 250. And so like he would sit on their back and they would do a bunch of push-ups. And they would sit on his back and he would do push-ups, just to prove that like he was stronger than them. It didn't really have to do with muscle size. Of course, that's one way to increase strength, but also muscle engagement, like how many fibers you can recruit mentally. So you can build your strength with kettlebells in ways that we don't really fully understand, and they're really easy to have in your room. And you can do all these. Everything you do in them is movement. Like you do swings and you do the Turkish get up, and all this stuff is like full body, really good for balance, really good for aging, and really good for just simple strength, which is what you need to do stuff. Like, let's be honest, like you don't walk around all day, you know, with your shirt off out in public, like hoping people look at you. Okay, well, maybe you do. But more often what you're going to do is like, you know, I have to move this table now, or I have to move this desk, and you're going to want to not injure yourself and be able to do it in an impressive way. And that's what strength is all about.
Move a couch, whatever you have to do to functionally get through your life without injuring yourself.
Right. Yeah, so spend a little bit of time working on strength instead of a lot of time working on your image, and you'll be happier with your League of Legends performance.
Got to wrap it around, put it in a nice little box for you guys. This is about League of Legends, we swear. Sean, do you have anything else for these guys?
I think we covered a lot. Let that digest, friends.
Right. I think we covered a lot of information. I'd really like to bring you guys back on in a couple months again, you know, maybe after the split ends, and we could really talk about the performance, see how Copenhagen Wolves have done, and I'm sure people are going to write back in with questions, because everything we've talked about today has reinforced a lot of what we've said, but from a professional standpoint, especially if we talk about scrub mentality and, you know, making yourself feel better and everything. And this is stuff that, again, I'll go back to. I wish somebody would have told me 2 years ago when I played this, when I was trying to do the big climb.
And it all makes a huge difference. It really, really does. It's kind of really, really hard to even begin to explain from somebody who used to come from just being an asshole all the time to like really coming full circle. But I mean, it's helped me out a lot, both personally and in game.
So
Well, and I remember
this.
too.
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I remember too, Adam, when that happened, because I've listened to this podcast since like Sotir was on. So
oh right, that's right.
So like, I remember you talking about like when Dom would say things to you, right?
Oh right.
And that's one thing that's really highlights what we talked about with having someone that you trust, because that was someone that you trust their opinion. He gives you good information that you feel you can apply to your life, or at least consider it, right? He doesn't necessarily have to agree with everything. And so that was one, a really good part of the podcast, and also two, then a good example of how that can be used in an effective way.
Yeah, for Weldon, because I don't know, you probably haven't listened to too much podcast, if any at all. A very long time, like I've hinted at it here before, but I used to reject criticism quite a bit. Finally, Dom got, had that rapport, didn't try to change
smack
me
him down a little bit.
But eventually, over time, speaking with Dom, I started to, like Chris had mentioned before, when he's talking to the people who's talking to him, he built a rapport with me and everything, and then eventually I was able to change my play style and make myself a better player, because I finally said I have to change this because this person, I trust this person's opinion.
And it's also different when it comes from a place of love, respect, or like an actual want for them to help you, not necessarily doing it to be a jerk or negative about. So yeah,
and I won't pretend that I've been listening to you guys since the beginning, because I don't want to insult your hardcore fans that are out there. But I've definitely became aware of the kinds of training that you guys are doing with these the BBC and stuff like that. And I was just super, super excited when I started to see stuff like that pop up, because that is exactly, like, you don't need to go out and hire a sports psychologist. Like, sports psychology is all stuff that people have figured out. And yes, we go and research it and confirm it, and we throw out some of the bad stuff and whatever, refine it. But what you guys are doing in your trainings is sports psychology. Like, you're taking the lessons you've learned, you're teaching people how to execute on that. And so that's the biggest thing that I recommend, is that they learn from you, how to handle this and how to be competitive in better and better ways as you all kind of like progress through this. And so that's really great what you guys are doing to kind of spread that mental toughness throughout the field, and especially the accepting criticism part. Because I think, going along with what I said earlier about what it is that they need to hear, then you also need to, the other half of that is working on like how it is that you accept criticism, and just believing that people do want to help you, and they just don't really know how to go around the best way to do it exactly.
I guess it's a good time for a shameless plug about Battle Arena Bronze. So we have, Battle Arena SmackDown Edition is coming. Chris knows about what this is. What we are doing is we are taking, for a small donation, we are taking 10 players, putting them in 2 different games. They are bronze, silver, or gold, and they are going to go against platinum and diamond players. And we've instructed the platinum and diamond players to play to the best of their ability. Do not troll. Play as if it's a normal game, and smack the people down, right? Like, beat them to the best of your ability. Don't style, just have fun. And so those players are going to play. Then we're going to have 5 people outside the game, again, platinum and diamond, watch those individual silver, gold, whatever players. And at the end, we're all going to sit down and team speak in our own separate channels, and you're going to get the point of view from the player you're playing against, the point of view from the spectator, and the point of view from the casters.
Oof.
At how to get better at this game. And you'll get the, that's why I said for a small donation, it's a lot of work, but to get these players to get better at the game by having all of this feedback and having the videos so they can go back and watch and see what they did right or wrong, I think is going to be helpful. So again, that goes live. It's bit.ly/BA SmackDown. The signups for that go live at midnight tonight if you are listening to this right now.
Yeah, and when I've heard you guys talk about that, I'm thinking, like, I really hope that when people are able to take advantage of that they really allow themselves to just kind of be open to it and take it as a learning experience rather than it being criticism again, like something that they're going to take personally, because taking things personally can really limit our abilities to grow. And so that's what you guys are doing is awesome. I'm really excited to hear how that goes.
From the psychological perspective, I think it's good too that you're doing it with this donation, because like, it's been proven that when people get something for free, that they're not in the right mindset to kind of take it. But like, if they've decided, like, I'm going to pay money for this because I want the help, that's like a certain level you have to reach mentally to be like prepared for that. So actually, it will be even more effective with this donation thing than it would have been ever if it was just something you gave away.
Yep. I'm glad everyone's agree with me here, because that was my mindset here. Was like, if people pay us $10, they are going to be more than likely to accept what is given to them. So again, that's Battle Arena SmackDown Edition. We're really excited about that. We'll be putting that out there, and when that event wraps up, I would love for either Chris or Weldon, whoever, just to kind of take a look at how we did it and give us feedback on how we can do that better from the sports point of view. So, and
if it's super successful, we'd be doing it more in the future as well. So,
right. Again, done with the shameless plug, I think that's everything. Chris, Weldon, thank you guys so much for.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, guys.
If you want to go ahead again, and Weldon, go ahead and talk about Mind Games GG. Tell people what they can see, and let's end the podcast with that.
Mind Games GG is my training platform, and I'm trying to do a very similar thing to what Adam just mentioned, like trying to get sports psychology out to the masses more. And so I'm actually trying to launch this month, March, not February, which is ending. But this month, my kind of like training platform for this, where you can log in and do sports psych training, the kind of stuff that I have. And of course, I won't be able to do it individually like I do with the teams, but I'm going to try to distill as much of this as I can into videos, and let you choose from the buffet of essentially what is there, so that you can benefit from the same kind of training. And I'm doing it through a launch, and I've set up a page for Trinity podcast listeners, or Triforce podcast listeners. I think I said it as, did I say it as Trinity? Oh shoot, now I've forgotten the website address. If you go to mindgames.gg/Triforce,
Triforce. I'm going right now.
I think that's what it is.
You are not born an athlete. You make yourself one.
Yes, that's it. Okay, so if you sign up there, then March 2nd is the day that I'm kind of starting this, and you'll get in your email inbox if you have email, hopefully. We'll talk about this. You'll get in your email inbox like the starting video and the announcement, and like we're gonna go through a 3-week set of training together, like in a structured way. And I'm structuring it because the same reason that we just talked about, like when stuff is just like laying around on the table, like we don't often pick it up if it's advice. But if we go through it structured as a cohort and we're all kind of engaged, it will have a better impact and you're more likely to do it. And that's my goal, is to get people who actually want to do this to sign up. So
I'll sign up right now.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, when we are done with this, Weldon, I will contact you in email because I would like you to send me a little blurb about exactly what that the MindGameGG/Triforce is, so I can throw that on the website. I can throw that on the subreddit, so I can make people aware, of what you are offering. Because while the Trinity Force podcast can't offer it, we are only so many people. So we're only so many people that can do it. So the more people out there that are trying to make people better at the game, that's all we would say. We're more for it. Go out there, find every piece, get diamond, and let us know, how well Mind Games GG worked out for you when this finally launches. So, Chris, do you have any plugs, anything you want people to take a look at?
My articles are on that same website, mindgames.gg. So if you go there, you'll be able to find content that I've written for soloQueue. That's kind of what I'm focusing mainly on right now, is the soloQueue aspect, having your mindset, setting goals for yourself, being able to be able to basically experience that in a healthier way rather than just kind of having all the anxiety or the frustration and the anger and all those sort of things. So that's what I've been focusing on. You can follow me on Twitter at @Alphenaar, ALPHENAAR on Twitter if you'd like. And honestly, tweet at me about ideas that maybe you'd like to have for topics, and I will do my best to be able to apply that to what I do with psychology, and that way you can have content that you're looking for. So.
Great. Again, thank you guys so much for joining on here. We will definitely be in touch in the future and have like a nice rendezvous in a couple months and really follow up on everything we had. So again, guys, you've listened to the Trinity Force podcast. Go check out mindgames.gg. Thank you again, Weldon and Chris, and we will see you all on. Well, if you're listening to this, you're going to get another episode 240 is on Monday. So I don't know how to say that terrible ending. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.